I'm going to start with the promise. So, from 2019 to 2021, Sudan was in the midst of a heady political transition brought on by a popular women and youth led revolution. Its 30-year dictatorship deposed, citizens experiencing newfound freedoms, civic dialogue at an all time high, and women's rights being discussed, debated, and even occasionally and imperfectly implemented through laws and policies. In Sudan, the potential for realizing the goals and spirit of Resolution 1325 in a way that fundamentally impacted the daily lives of women was vast. For women's rights activists in the country, it was more than a moment. It was the culmination of a generation of hard fought struggles. So, what has happened to that promise today? In terms of the reality today, there are not enough superlatives to describe the devastation wrought on by the current conflict between the Sudanese Armed Forces, the SAF, and the Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, in Sudan, which began in April 2023. 12 million people have been forcibly displaced. 30 million people require humanitarian assistance. Over 600,000 people are experiencing famine. This is the highest level of food insecurity being documented in any country. Civilians have been killed, assaulted, kidnapped, and sold into slavery with impunity. Health facilities and health workers have been targeted. The paramilitary RSF has committed genocide. The toll of the conflict on all aspects of life, from disruptions in the banking and communications infrastructure to the high price and lack of accessibility of basic goods to the collapse of many educational facilities, is unbearably heavy. Most recently, the horrors inflicted in Darfur has gained some international attention. Resolution 1325 and the Women, Peace and Security agenda as a whole have never been more relevant to Sudan, nor have they been further from reach. A few examples. 1325, quote, calls on all parties to armed conflict to take special measures to protect women and girls from gender-based violence, particularly rape and other forms of sexual abuse, unquote. Yet sexual violence targeting women and girls has been a constant and unrelenting feature of the conflict in Sudan. Resolution 1325 also, quote, emphasizes the responsibility of all states to put an end to impunity and to prosecute those responsible for genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes, including those relating to sexual and other violence against women and girls, unquote. With the domestic justice system severely constrained, survivors cannot access the legal system, inadequate as it is. There are few to no safe spaces from which they can act without fearing retaliation from armed actors or their trauma being instrumentalized by the opposing side. International war crimes documentation is not adequately supported, and as a result, impunity reigns. And lastly, Resolution 1325 stressed, quote, the importance of women's equal participation and full involvement in all efforts for the maintenance and promotion of peace and security, and the need to increase their role in decision making with regard to conflict prevention and resolution. Women in Sudan toppled a dictator, and yet the legitimate and carefully considered attempts of the women's movement and women leaders of being engaged in any of the previous ceasefire negotiations or dialogues have been tokenized or outright ignored by the belligerents. None of the warring parties include high level representation by women. Major geopolitical players in the conflict, such as Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, also do not prioritize women's involvement in peacemaking. The prospects for any peace negotiations or ceasefire talks have dimmed, given a lack of political will by regional and international powers. So, what about the potential? Despite the chaos and destruction, or maybe because of it, Resolution 1325 has immense potential as a strong guiding framework for the WPS agenda in Sudan. Women's heroic leadership at the grassroots community level remains critical as both a practical intervention as well as a form of political mobilization. For example, this can take the form of women's emergency response groups or community kitchens, providing critical food, healthcare, psychosocial counseling, hope, and so much more. Women have also come together to write a feminist agenda for peace. Since geopolitical powers are failing to work towards a genuine peace, starting with a complete ceasefire. It is the women of Sudan who carry the torch of Resolution 1325 today, holding space for its untapped potential. And my colleague Amani, who is here today on the webinar, is going to put a link in the chat, and I would ask folks to take a moment to sign the letter that speaks more to Canada's engagement or lack thereof in this situation. Thank you so much.